Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for November 5, 2022, the Axe Falls edition. And we begin with that story from New York Times Deal Book that Elon Musk has begun firing almost all Twitter employees. Of course, the question is, did they do so legally? It appears they did not meet either the federal or California state deadline for notice or warning before layoffs. It's unclear whether people were given the benefits they were entitled to or given opportunity to COBRA for insurance. But that is what happens when you work for a megalomaniac who doesn't think he has to follow the law. Our next story, in fact, our next 3 stories come to us from the Wall Street Journal. The first one is the Risk and Compliance Journal. Richard Vandeport reporting that the IRS has opened 20 criminal investigations in its crackdown on the evasion of sanctions that the U.S. imposed after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The IRS is taking a leading role in the task force capture, and this is a certainly interesting development to have the IRS as a part of this going forward. Next up, another article from the Risk and Compliance Journal, this time from Mingy Sun. And Société Générale, that well-known FCPA violator, has named a new chief risk officer. Stephanie Landon, who was the deputy chief risk officer since October 2022, will become the chief risk officer on December 1. He will succeed Sadia Rikke, who is leaving the bank at the end of the month to become the chief risk officer at Standard Chartered in London. So Landon joined SocGen in 1989. No word on his role in the bribery and corruption scandal which ensnared the company. And our final story, once again from the Wall Street Journal, is about data, and that sometimes with data, less is more. Obviously, data improves your ability to analyze the world around it. In a ideal world, more data is better, but as Jerker Denrell, professor of strategy and decision-making at the University of Warwick, says, sometimes we're not in that world, and the phrase less is more comes to mind when it comes to data. This phrase is irrelevant for both human decision makers and the algorithms which their decisions are based upon. So, sometimes less is more when it comes to data. Have a great weekend. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.